Trevor Kavanagh, who's political columnist at The Sun. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, David.
Really good to talk to you. We've got a lot to get through this morning. I'd like to start, if I may. We were talking earlier on in the programme about knife crime and the epidemic of knife crime in this country. And as we know, this terrible story of a school pupil who was stabbed to death by a teenage boy in South London for the simple reason that she rejected flowers given to her from him. A 15-year-old girl. This argument spilled out. It was on a bus, the number 60 bus, onto the pavement, and she was attacked, and this young man was wielding a sword-like knife, wearing all black, at around 8:30 a.m. This is yesterday, and very sadly, this young lady died at the scene. This is unacceptable, Trevor. What is going wrong?
Well, it's shocking and terrifying, I think, not just for the family involved in this, but for families across the country. Everyone, I think, worries the moment their teenage children leave home. And the moment they walk out of the door, you feel that they're at risk. And this is a phenomenon which has burst upon us over the last 5 or 10 years. It's a recent phenomenon. And there must be a solution. And I think, as you said or hinted, it lies at home. It is the parents who know perfectly well that their child has a knife, but can do nothing to control them. Often I think that it belongs with children with single-parent families where a mother or a father, usually a mother, is on her own or out of work and unable to keep an eye on those children or discipline them when they need to be disciplined.
Or is it, and I'm just pushing back on that about single-parent families, or is it that because it is so difficult to parent children on your own that you give in, and because you're so desperate to keep the kids on side that maybe you turn a blind eye?
Well, either of those things. It doesn't matter what the actual outcome is. The result is of children who are not being disciplined either at school or at home. And there has to be a move which is really serious if they're going to stop, if the authorities are going to stop this at all. And at the moment, they're not stopping it. It's on the rise, on the rampage, really. And that means that there's going to have to be knife searches. There's going to have to be metal detectors in various places. I mean, it's an awful intrusion on the civil liberties of everybody else. But there must also be penalties which really mean that if you're caught with a knife, you are punished, and make sure you don't do it again.
And of course, that's what they do in the States, isn't it? When I was there, I saw the scanners above the doors of the schools, so the kids couldn't take knives in.
That's right, and I think this is an unfortunate step, which is repellent to most of us that it's necessary, but it is necessary. And we simply cannot expose our children to the sort of catastrophic deaths and wounding that takes place on a random, almost casual basis.
Well, quite. And just looking at the numbers here, in the year ending March of last year, there were 45,000 offences involving a knife or sharp instrument in England and Wales. This is 9% higher than the year before, 34% higher than in 2010 and 2011. Peter and I were talking also about this rite of passage. What is it that drives teenagers to have a knife as some sort of, I suppose, some symbol of a coming of age?
It's very difficult for me, to come from a totally different generation and background, to be even able to comprehend what's going on with children walking around with foot-long zombie knives. I mean, I'm not actually sure what a zombie knife is. It sounds terrifying. And it was quite clear that this boy got on the bus. I mean, I'm not going into too many details, although no charges have yet been applied. But was actually carrying a knife with him, which was a lethal weapon. And there are laws against knives of that sort of size already. They should be policed. Until they are, you're going to have gangs who are carrying them and other children who start carrying them for self-protection.
And just looking at the numbers here, and I was talking to Peter about this, more teenagers have been murdered in London this year than for the whole of last year. This is now, this poor young girl becomes the 16th teenager to be murdered in London. And I'm just wondering what on earth the Mayor of London is doing, because he said, I'm absolutely heartbroken by the death of a 15-year-old girl in Croydon. What most of us are thinking is, what are you doing about it?
Well, I was about to mention Sadiq Khan, and I have to say he is possibly the most inept and useless Mayor of London we've ever seen in this position, a position which carries considerable authority in terms of policing. It's one of his responsibilities, policing things like stabbings, like knife crime, among many others. And frankly, I think that it's almost as if he's switched off from it, utters these occasional soothing words, which aren't soothing, they're actually insulting.
And many people are actually saying that the problem with Sadiq Khan is he is so obsessed with ULEZ, with net zero, with all of these things that actually the majority of Londoners don't want. He's taken his eye off the ball.
Well, I think that he has decided that he's going to do what I mean, frankly, TfL is more or less officially bankrupt because of the way that it's been run by Sadiq Khan and his cronies. So they're desperately in search of money, and that's their preoccupation. That doesn't mean that you can't chew gum and walk at the same time. There's plenty of scope for a crime commissioner, or in this case, the Mayor of London, to act in a way that he is in control of the Metropolitan Police as far as London is concerned. And there are steps he could take to make sure that the measures we've already discussed are put into place and enacted firmly.
And what's the best way for him to do that? How does he show leadership, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the point is that you have to stop children carrying knives. And these are still children, really. Even those who are in their late teens, they're still children. And they are immature, and they need the sort of control and disciplines. But I'm not talking about being brutal to them. I'm just talking about sort of parameters that they have to observe, and they have to make sure that they are stopped from carrying knives in public. Stop and search is one of the key things, and Sadiq Khan and indeed Theresa May in a time were against that. And I think that we're paying a price for it.
Let's move on and talk about the police. And again, a story I mentioned to Peter, this Metropolitan Police firearms officer who shot dead a gangster 8 years ago faces being sacked despite being cleared of criminal wrongdoing. This is a marksman known as W80. He shot dead 28-year-old Jermaine Baker in a police operation in 2015. He was not charged, but now the IOPC is set to announce that he could well face a gross misconduct hearing. Obviously, that would then mean if he is found guilty, he would be sacked. What message does that send out? That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I think the ordinary copper is in a terrible dilemma. They're wrong when they're right, and they're right when they're wrong. Whatever they do falls into some sort of category for which they can be blamed or accused of incompetence or almost in these days irrelevance. And it is the management of all organisations from the top down, whether it's Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, or the Chief of Police in every county and every administration in Britain. And these are the people we need to look at, not the ordinary bobbies, not the man who is charged with something and then the charges are dropped or accused of something like this policeman was. It is the authorities that set the parameters again, and they should observe them properly. And I think they simply lost control and given up.
And just in terms of the IOPC, the thing I can't understand is why has it taken them so long, 8 years, to decide that they will actually come to some sort of tribunal? What have they been doing?
Well, the wheels of injustice turn exceeding slow. And justice delayed, especially for periods as long as this, is justice denied. But it's another example of the way that we have been ground down into the sort of bureaucratic mincing machine in which who knows what goes on behind the scenes, because they never explain why they've taken 7 or 10 years to deal with important issues. They simply come out with something at the end of that time, and you have to swallow it. This is unacceptable, not just for the officer concerned, who now looks like losing his career and his employment, but for the public who need to know what's going on and have it done properly.
Where do you stand on the police having these body cameras? Because they were brought in under the understanding that it would actually give closure to the families, that there would be a sense of fair play. I'm reading this morning that police officers are switching off their body-worn cameras when force is being used. They're deleting footage, they're sharing videos on WhatsApp. Now, it may well be a minority of police officers doing that. It costs 90 million to bring in these body cameras. And they're, out of all of the police officers, there are 150 camera misuse reports. Is this a problem we should be concerned about, or is this just simply a minority of cases?
Well, it is a reflection once more of the similar attitude that developed by the armed police, who decided they weren't going to carry guns, or they were going to hand in their licenses after one of their members was accused of was charged after the shooting of a fugitive driver. They can't win either way, as I said earlier. They can't win when they do the right thing, and they can't win in any case. Why would a policeman want to record something which might get him in trouble simply because he stepped over a line that some arbitrary magistrate has decided was too far, when he was simply trying to do his job? There's no way of him knowing in advance whether what he's going to have to do in order to restrain a criminal will subsequently be seen to have been over the top. So I don't blame them, frankly, because they're not being protected from the people who are trying to stop them actually doing their job, which is to protect the citizen.